Okay, one thing I did want to mention is I'm welding. Like a lot of these areas I can clamp down to make sure they're tight, like I showed you on the wheelhouse. Up here, you want to make sure this is tight too. One thing you can do, you got a body hammer or something, and if you are having problems, remember you can put some self-tapping screws or rivets or something and tighten it up too. And if you remember, this is folded over, we just had to bend it back, and now you want to make sure this is tight. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start in the center. Get kind of close by it, just push in on it right there. That way you know it's tight against this, because you don't want to be welding up a gap area. And another thing you want to be sure and do, you notice I started in the center. You want to start in the center and work out, because if you start working on the outside and work in, you may have a buckle and there will be nothing you can do about it. This way it kind of folds it out and levels out. So be sure and alternate them. Don't just do one by the other. So I'll skip a couple down, do one over here, and so forth till I'm got them all welded up. Need to take a quick break. Don't let that get too hot. Okay, just kind of give you a little progress update of where we're at. We've been doing a lot of welding, and remember I had the spot welds here, and I went and remember I started from the center and worked out on those. And if you remember, I had that edge that was real jaggedy. I kind of had to weld that up. You can see that my weld's kind of following where that line was at. Now, one thing I want to mention about this is what you do not want to, when you start welding this seam up, you don't want to start and try to do a real pretty continuous weld from one end to the other. If you do, all this is going to be warped and you're going to have a lot of damage. So what you have to do is you want to weld an 1.5 inch or less welds, you know, basically little nuggets at a time. You're going to still alternate those back and forth. I mean, it's hard to make a real pretty weld like if you've welded and done a continuous bead on thicker metal. You know, you can't really do that with this type of steel, or else it'll warp it. So I'll do a little weld here, and I'll alternate back and forth till finally they get closer and closer together, until finally you start joining all the welds together. Slow process, but you know that's how you have to do it. And also, if it starts getting too hot, you know, allow it to cool a little bit. You know, go weld somewhere else, take a break or whatever. And now I'm going to start grinding, and the same principle applies for that. I've seen a lot of warped panels due to grinding. And you're going to need to grind that wheel, that weld, you know, regular, like that row-lock sander. It's not going to grind it. You're going to have to use one of these grinders with a hard stone on it. But try to hit just the weld. You don't want to thin this metal, and you don't want to thin that. And don't over-grind it. You know, you can damage it. And another thing, you're going to grind a little here, just like when you're welding. And go back and forth. Don't try to get it completely smooth in one spot, or that'll overheat and warp the metal as well. So it's a slow process. So I'm going to kind of use this edge right here so I'm not grinding the panels. I'm going to grind that weld a little bit. I'm going to come over here, back and forth until I have it all ground down smooth. About the only way you can do that without warping the panel or thinning, and try to keep your grinding disc on the weld and not either one of the panels, so you don't thin or weaken the panels here. And for the rest of the welding, I'll do the same. I'll grind those down smooth, and then we'll have all the grinding done. Now this takes a while, get all that done, and then we can. One more thing I want to mention when welding, you'll notice I was welding back here, and this is again something you have to move back and forth, is have a welding blanket. There's glass here, so when I'm welding back in this area, I have it setting here so any splatter don't pop up on there. If I'm up here, I have it shoved down in here, protecting everything in here. So, but you want to take the extra time to protect that, and plus that'll give it a little extra time to cool as you're doing that. And the same applies for grinding. This throws some very hot sparks, and this grinder will, you know, if it hits any of this glass, it's going to pit it. So, you know, I have a tarp here, welding blanket, or something to throw over there so that it doesn't pit this glass. Glass is very easy to pit. So you want to protect your glass, and you know, don't overheat the metal when grinding. Other than that, take some time. Well, I got it ground down and just about ready for fiberglass. However, I'm going to have to stop today. Kind of starting to rain. So what I'm going to do to protect that, I'm going to put some self-etch primer on there, and I'll have to grind that off before I apply the fiberglass filler that I'm going to put on it tomorrow. So go ahead and get a self-etch primer on all the bare metal and start back on it tomorrow.